Hey YouTube viewers, this is Donnie Smith and welcome to this video series that is designed to help you pass the ASE exam. Now this video series is specifically for the paint refinish, and what we're going to do is we'll go through the task and give you the knowledge to pass the test. What this is not really your prep test type book. It's not just test questions. If you want that, there is a link down in the description. You can get more information about that. What this is, this basically goes through all the tasks that you will need to know to pass the test. The next task that we're going to look at is to strip paint to bare substrate, basically removing the paint. Now, first of all, before we move forward, I want to talk about what is the substrate. I have the habit of saying strip to metal, but a lot of the parts are not metal. They may be plastic. They may be SMC, sheet molded compound. They may be aluminum. They may be fiberglass. A wide variety of materials are used to make these cars. So the substrate just means to strip down to whatever that surface is, whatever that material is. Now I just wanted to touch on that just to make sure that we wasn't confused about the substrate before we move forward. Now we touched on this in the last video, but I want to dive in a little bit deeper, talk about some of the paint defects that may cause us to have to strip to the substrate. Now the first and most obvious cause is going to be adhesion failure. This is where you're going to see the paint, it's going to be peeling or flaking off of the surface, off the substrate, and this is due to a lack of adhesion. For whatever reason, this could be from the factory. There's a lot of cars from the factory that had paint defects where the paint has lost adhesion and starts peeling off, or it could be due to the last paint job wasn't prepped properly, or whatever the reason is. If it's peeling off or flaking off, that's probably going to require that you have to strip this down to the substrate. Another problem that you may see that may require you to strip the car down to the substrate is if you look at the paint surface and you see any bubbling. If you see bubbling, that could indicate that there's surface rust under there starting to form, and that may require you to have to remove the coatings. Or if you do see some rust, some rust that has broke through the paint, that may require that you have to strip the surface down to the substrate. Another problem that may be a little bit harder to identify, but if you see that it's real dull, the panel's real dull, it's lost all of its gloss, that could be oxidation, or it could be just faded or whatever. But it could also mean that there's tiny little cracks in there, and you can't really see it if you just glance at it. You have to look at it really close. But what it is, it's checking, or it's like a micro cracking, just really small cracks. And if you look at it real close, maybe you have to use one of those magnifying glasses that they have that have a little light in it, and you look down on the surface, or if you look real close, you can probably see it, and you'll see those small little cracks in the paint surface. Now if it's doing that, that's going to require that you strip those coatings down to the substrate as well. So if you see something that has lost its gloss, be certain to look real close at it and determine if it's just faded, oxidizing, or if it's checking or micro cracking. Now another problem you may have is there's someone keyed it, or someone put a scratch in it, or whatever, has a scratch, and there may not be any dents there, but the scratch may go down to the metal. And if that occurs, you are going to have to strip you may not have to strip the whole panel or the whole car, or whatever it is you're working on, but you may have to strip that area down to the substrate. Now you can probably go ahead and feather edge on either side of it, but in that area, you want to be sure that you strip it down. Another reason, kind of similar, is rock chips. A lot of times the rock chips will go down to the substrate surface. And this comes, you're following vehicles and trucks throwing rocks up. You may only find a lot of these rock chips on the front section of a car, on the nose or front bumper cover, hood, things like that. And basically, those rocks hit and knock the paint coating off in that area, and sometimes it's down to metal. And sometimes that'll also cause surface rust. So if you see that and notice that there's a lot of chips and that it is down in the metal surface, probably going to have to strip that down to the substrate in that area too. Now again, this is probably the ones that you can strip the areas that need to be down to the substrate, and then feather in. You're not necessarily going to have to strip the whole car down because there's some rock chips in the front. And the last thing we're going to talk about in this video is your paint mill thickness. And if you notice that the paint mill thickness is 10, 12, 14 mils thick or more, that's going to require you to strip it down partially or completely. Now this is probably going to be preference, you know, how your shop or how you prefer to do it. You know, if you would rather media blast it or just DA sand, you know, to partially strip some of it off. That's going to be, you know, that's going to be your call as a technician or as a shop owner. So if the paint mill thickness is that thick, you're going to have to do something though. On your edges, you know, you keep building up, and that makes your edges smaller and smaller as you put coatings on there, and that's going to make your gaps too narrow. And you open the door, they're going to hit, rub, knock paint off, and you know, it can also lead to adhesion failure down the road. I mean, there's a lot of problems that can lead to. So if it is 10, 12, 14 mils, you may consider partial or full strip. Now we talked about some of the paint defects that may result in having to strip it to the substrate. Now let's talk about a few techniques to strip the card down to the substrate. So we basically got 3 methods to remove paint coatings. And there's some other ones we'll talk about as well. The first one is chemical stripping, and this is where you use chemical strippers, and you know, that eats into the paint, and you know, that was used a lot. It's being used less due to EPA and being compliant and things like that. But you know, if your shop is allowed to use that still, then you know, that may be a method that you can use. And the second one is media blasting. Now they used to use a lot of sand with the thicker metals. These thinner ones, you have to be careful. They got different, you know, materials that you can use for that. And that's where you use a blaster and you actually blast the coatings off. And the third one is sanding, and we talked about this in the last video, but that's where you use a sander to sand down the paint coatings. And this could work well for your partial, you know, if you're just taking the mills down, or you can go, you know, completely to the substrate using, you know, like a DA sander with 36 or 80 grit. Now there are a few other methods that I have used to remove paint coatings, and this works especially well, you know, if you have adhesion failure for whatever reason, you know, peeling, flaking, or delamination or whatever. And one of them is to use a high pressure washer, and you hit it with that. Sometimes that'll take a lot of that coating off for you. The second one is use an air hose. You know, same principle, doesn't work quite as well, but sometimes that will take a lot of the paint, you know, the paint that wasn't adhering properly, you know, it'll remove that. And the third one is a razor blade, where you basically, and you have to be careful because this will cut down into the substrate, but if you carefully take a razor blade and the paint's not sticking well, you know, you can basically just scrape the paint off. You know, you have to be careful. Those are a few alternative methods that I've used. You know, they seem to work well for, you know, the right application. You know, if it's, you know, especially adhesion failure, where you can take that paint off real easy. It is my goal to keep these videos short, so that's all we're going to cover in this video. Just give you little chunks at a time, let you absorb that, and then you can watch the next video. Down below is a link to the test prep books that I have, but also there's a link that'll take you to all these videos if you're wanting to go through more than one video at a time and take you through the entire playlist. So be sure and check that out to go through the ones that I've already uploaded. And as they become available, they'll also be put on this site as well. Thanks for watching this video. I hope this helps, and good luck with your ASE exam.